Greetings, everyone. I'm Mar. Once again, this is my opinion. As you can tell from the title up there, it is my review of the latest All Elite Wrestling pay-per-view, AEW Full Gear. Now, right off the back, I'm going to state this is the first of their pay-per-view events that I've watched since attending Double or Nothing back in May. And that's not for lack of trying, it's just that I always forgot that the other ones were coming up or was too busy. I did try to watch All Out, but by the time I found out how to watch it, I was like, yeah, frick it, it's too late. I'm not going to try. I did pay attention that night. That was when I thought we could still actually watch it on the Fight Network over here, but apparently that's an overseas thing. And we got the other channel, the B1. I'm too lazy to look up what the name of the channel is, but that one you can actually watch the pay-per-view event in full. And you can actually get the replays too for those of you who are a little bit too busy during the initial broadcast. Just got to download the app. Now, on the whole, I actually thought this was a pretty good pay-per-view outing from them. Hard to say if I liked it better than Double or Nothing because I haven't gone back and actually watched Double or Nothing on pay-per-view yet. And it's a little bit harder to tell when you're watching it live versus watching it on your TV screen. So it's a little bit harder to compare there. But I think Double or Nothing gets a slight edge more from the fact that that was my first pay-per-view event that ever attending live, and plus that ending with Moxley coming out kind of cinches it. Not that that takes away anything from this one, it's just that's a little edge in the cap. Now I do have some notes for this one. There's only going to be one match I'm not going to talk about, and when I get to it, I will explain why. Now the initial match was Dr. Britt Baker, DMD, taking on Bea Priestley. And it was a good match for what it had to be. It was one of those things you just see Dr. Britt coming out and it's like, the doctor will see you now. And she eventually gets the submission by Lockjaw. Now this is just an okay match, good for the dark spot or pre-show, whatever you want to call it here. But it was the post-match that really made this work, and that was we finally get Awesome Kong and Brandy Rhodes coming out. After weeks upon weeks of build-up, here they are. And as if Awesome Kong wasn't scary enough, but then you get Awesome Kong holding a blade. That is even scarier. I know a lot of fans are probably wishing, oh, if only she had done that to Michael Cole when she scared the crap out of him in that one Royal Rumble. But alas, that didn't happen. Here, she gets a knife, and we're like, what's she going to do with that? But she doesn't do the scary thing. She just cuts a lock of hair, which is humiliating, and keeps it as a trophy. We'll see if she still has it in the coming weeks. But it was a nice little, more psychological warfare on her part, and a nice little way to end the pre-show, going into the main card. Before I get too much further into this, we only had two commentators tonight. It was a good old JR and Excalibur. And I've only really heard Excalibur on the TV show, so I don't know how he sounded on the previous pay-per-views, but I didn't think he was that bad. I know initially people were complaining about it. I don't know if it's just the fact he commentates with the mask, which he's a luchador. It's fine for him to commentate with the mask. Back in the day, if El Santo did commentary, or even if Blue Demon did commentary, would you want them to not wear the masks? What about Rey Mysterio if he did commentary after he in-ring retired? Would you want him to not wear the mask? It's his gimmick, just like JR with the cowboy hat. He should wear it. Of course, JR got his introduction with the Sooner theme, a little slip of the tongue there. And it was nice. He did stumble a couple times throughout the night, but he still sounded pretty decent on commentary, and I'll take it over the super micromanaged commentary we have on Raw, SmackDown, and the pay-per-views nowadays, always shilling the network and everything. I did like how, in order to hype up the world title match later in the night, he mentioned two other major title changes that happened in that very same building that they were in, or at least in the city, which was the Royal Farms Arena in Baltimore, Maryland. In case you're wondering what those title changes were, it was Ron Simmons winning the world title, and of course, Billy Graham winning the world title, the longest reigning heel champion at that time. And of course, what made that one great is that he won it off of the living legend Bruno Sammartino. So, historic win there. in another way. Perfect way to build up the world title match that happened later on. Well, the first match on the main card was Proud and Powerful Santana and Ortiz taking on the Young Bucks, which I thought was a nice way to open up the card. Match went about 21 minutes even, and in the end, Santana and Ortiz beat the Young Bucks. Now, for the most part, the match was what you would expect from these two, especially the Bucks with their super kicks. But there was one spot around the end point that I thought was pretty good, and that was they're going for the Melter driver, and I don't know if it was Matt or Nick. I know that's bad, but these two, it's hard for me to remember which is which. The one that went to do the jumping part of it, he couldn't jump all the way and started selling his knee, which for those who say they don't sell anything, it's like, look at that. That's a good sell job because now he was selling his knee. So the other brother sets him up on the top rope for another move. And then that goes into the finish where they get the win. But then the Rock and Roll Express comes in to aid them after the match. And we get a couple good spots from the Rock and Roll Express, including a dive through the middle rope. And I believe it was JR that said you don't have to be you're never too old to rock and roll, and Rock and Roll Express showed that. I wonder if this is just them helping to build up the Young Bucks, or if this is eventually going to lead to some type of mentorship storyline or even a match. I mean, if they can still go, I'd actually love to see the Rock and Roll Express get one more big match on pay-per-view. I know Cornette's probably going to be critical of most of the match, except maybe that sell job, but even then he might. But I think the Rock and Roll Express thing near the end, he'll probably be mixed on. Like to see that they actually got some stuff in, but also be like, yeah, at your age, you shouldn't be doing stuff like that. But we will see. Like, all in all, good opener for the pay-per-view. Next, we got Hangman Adam Page taking on the Bastard Pac. Match went about 18 minutes, 30 seconds, ended with Adam Page beating Pac. And this was a good match to watch. Sadly, a little skewed on my part. This is a match that could have happened at Double or Nothing, but sadly did not for various reasons. Oh well, at least I got to watch it in the comfort of my own home with my back against the pillow, bird on my shoulder, friends on the phone. And I mean that by Facebook Messenger instead of sitting in a weird seat at the MGM Grand Arena. A little bit into the match, we got a spot where Hangman was suplexed into the guardrail corner, which that made me like go ooh a little bit. And the match went pretty good for the rest of it. Pac, went for the Black Arrow, but he missed, which went into Hangman winning with the buckshot lariat. Now, I'm actually glad that Pac missed the Black Arrow instead of a hit and then kick out, because if there's one thing I really hate about modern wrestling, it's the fact there's way too many kick out of finisher moves. I think you should save those for the big matches and usually when they mean something. If you want to have a finish get hit and then have that not be the finish of the match, whatever happened to a rope break, or even, especially if it's more a veteran wrestler, have them roll out of the ring. Then you can have the commentators actually sell it pretty well, especially JR here in AEW. That's the wily veteran. He's rolling out of the ring. He knows he can't be pinned on the outside of the ring. If he wants to win the match, he's going to have to get him in there. Works better a little bit for title matches that way, but wily veteran. A match after this was Shawn Spears with Tully Blanchard taking on Joey Janela. Match went 11 minutes 45 seconds. This match is the one where I don't really have any notes to state other than the finish, which was Spears beating Janela, and that was because out of all the matches, this was the one I had the least interest in watching, so I chose this one to exit the room for my bathroom break. And in the words of a certain cartoon character who did cameo in this show, I had to go take a shit. And the match was more or less done by the time I got back. Got to see the finish, not really much notes to put down. And that's all I have to really say about Spears and Janela. I know the fans of them are probably going to be going, ah! But sorry guys, wasn't that interested in the match and picked it as my bathroom break. Rather have gone there than over the other next couple matches. because the next 4 matches were the ones I was really looking forward to on this pay-per-view, and they alone were worth the $50 I paid to watch it. Clocking in at 13 minutes, we got SoCal Underground taking on the Lucha Bros and Private Party in a triple threat match for the AEW World Tag Team titles. This was the kind of triple threat match where we have the teams in 3 corners but only 2 members in the ring, and then in order for another team to come in, they have to be tagged in, which works well if you do it right with heel heat. But then you got that logical thing of, why would you tag in someone who isn't your teammate? They could win the match and you'd just be sitting there going, I'm dumb as fuck. But it's one of those ones that if you build it right, it can work. And here I thought it worked good for the most part. SoCal Underground ended up retaining the titles. There's not really much notes that I have for the match itself. It was pretty decent for what you would expect from these 3. You probably could expect a better match. Like I said, match lasted 13 minutes, so not too short, but not too long. If it had gone a little bit longer, maybe it would have staled the match. Maybe it could have gotten a better match. But for what it was, it worked. Got to see the champions successfully retain their titles. The most thing I have to talk about is the post-match here, which was the lights go out right as the Lucha Bros are about to do an attack. And when they come back on, there's a third Lucha Bro that the announcers were calling Pentagon Tres. He mimics Pentagon and goes to attack him. And then as the bros end up fleeing, and we find out it's Christopher Daniels, and he has a chair, which misses, and that's when the Lucha Bros decide to leave and live to fight another day. Considering what they did on TV to Christopher Daniels with that pile driver to the entranceway, this was a justifiable attack, and the crowd was very into it. They started chanting "Fallen Angel," which you could tell that Daniels was smiling at that point. And I think this is the best time to mention that I have, for the most part, liked what I've been seeing on AEW TV. The only thing off the top of my head I can state that on the main show I have hated or really have grinded my gears seeing was when a certain small guy kicked out of Pentagon's pile driver. It's like, really? Guy weighs only around 100 pounds and he's going to kick out of a pile driver? Pile driver is one of those moves that you should protect and only kick out of during big matches, especially if it's your finish. If it's not your finish, you got a little bit more wiggle room, but even then, it's a pile driver. You're landing on your head. This is the same type of move that broke Andy Kaufman's neck, that legitimately broke Stone Cold's neck. I rest my case. Next, we got the match for the AEW Women's Championship. Riho defending against her mentor, Emi Sakura. Match went 13 minutes, 20 seconds, and in the end, Riho retained her title. Riho, even though she's been in the business about 10 years since she was a kid, still a little green depending on who she's working with. But I thought this match was pretty decent considering how many times they've wrestled each other, which the video package built up beautifully, and the fact that Riho was taught by Sakura. I think these two would have to have tried really, really hard in order to have a crappy match. And for what it was, I thought it was a pretty good match. I do actually have some notes here. This was the match where I actually started to take notes as the night went along. I thought I was going to be able to remember most of the other stuff off the top of my head, but sadly, other than a couple spots, I didn't. Note that the last 2 matches are probably going to be where I go in the most detail on what happened. First good spot of the match was Riho flip rolling out of the first pin attempt, which I thought was nice. Nice way to show her flexibility. A little bit after that, Riho did a top rope foot stomp onto the outside, which I'm like, oh, that's a good little high spot there. Nice way to use her weight, even though she's smaller than Sakura, to her advantage, because whoever you are, 100 pounds plus coming down on you is still gonna hurt. Even if you was down to me, that's still gonna hurt. Riho crashed a little bit on the outside, which is to be expected because gravity can be your friend, but when you're jumping from the top rope, not so much. Once they got back in the ring, Sakura eventually put Riho in a rolling surfboard, which I'm like, oh, that's pretty good. Shows off Sakura's knowledge as the wily veteran. To that end, there really wasn't a straight heel or face in this match, which I liked because you got enough drama with the mentor student relationship there that is like the drama just builds itself. But the closest to a heel would probably have been Sakura, and that's mainly because she has the size and experience advantage on Riho. So Riho was coming into the match as an underdog, defending her title against the wily female veteran. But with the traditional Japanese formula of respect, which really came into play during the post-match, you didn't really need a straight heel or face for this match. Maybe for Riho's later defenses, you'll probably have a more heel-esque opponent, which will, depending on the size advantage they have, will really play into the psychology of the match. Here, that relationship was enough to build the psychology, at least I thought. Riho did a 619 into a crossbody for a near fall, which I thought was cool. I actually liked that they called it a 619, though even though that is named after Ray's zip code, part of me was still thinking, I mean, can they call that on this show? I mean, legally? Riho got out of a pinning combination a little bit after this with a rope break with her foot, which that got me to clap a little bit going, a rope break? How much of a novel concept? I know that's probably going to sound a little boring to keep hearing me say that, but it's one thing that I really miss. I think it's more a modern WWE thing. And Riho did not hit Sakura with her finish to win. She caught her with a simple pinning combination and won. It's kind of the Bret Hart thing where, you can get you with a pin out of nowhere. And that's what it felt here. It's like Riho caught her former teacher with a simple pinning combination and won. And you could tell in the post-match that Sakura was disappointed that she lost the match and didn't get to walk home with the title, but she respected her student. She shook her hand and then even raised Riho's hand. You could tell the admiration and respect between these two. Next, we got to what I thought was one of the better matches of the night, probably the best match of the night, and the one I was looking forward to the most, and that was Cody Rhodes challenging Le Champion, the connoisseur of the bubbly, our birthday boy Chris Jericho with Jake Hager in his corner. MJF was in Cody's corner. Match went a little bit under half an hour, which I thought was the perfect length of time for this match. And in the end, Jericho retained, but not without a little bit of controversy post-match, which I'll get to. The build-up for this match with the video package and the promos was perfect. The initial video package of Cody at home, building up his legacy and how he needs to win this title. Jericho showing why he is Le Champion and how he keeps reinventing himself. The contract signing, the attack on Jericho, pulling him from the up booth, him showing the ticket, going, I have a ticket. Well, this is the best and perfect way to build up a world title match between two experienced performers. And of course, the added benefit of Cody saying that if he loses, he will never challenge for the title again adds a little bit more drama. Now, we all know wrestling being wrestling. They're going to find a way to wiggle out of that stipulation eventually, whether or not they'll have the caveat that contextually they meant while Jericho was champion, or considering what happens post-match, they'll wiggle out of it. We'll see. That undesirable to undeniable promo from Cody. Perfect go-home promo from the babyface challenger. Just in case the match went to a hour time limit, in order to avoid a draw, we had Dean Malenko, Arn Anderson, and the Great Muta as judges at ringside. They had notes in front of them, although from what I've heard, neither of them took notes. I was paying more attention to the match than them whenever they showed them, except for their face. They seemed like they were uninterested and didn't want to be there outside the paycheck, but it could have been them just no-selling it other than the initial wave from Malenko and Anderson when they were first shown. Muta just looked on. He's the Great Muta. He doesn't need to sell anything. Except for maybe his opponent selling his mist. Cody entered with flames and choir as he came down the ramp, and his normal theme didn't kick in until he got to the ring. Jericho came out like only Jericho can. Once the match started, they started slow with some chain wrestling, which I thought was the perfect way to build this. You don't want to get into it too heavy since it's not overly personal yet. Like if they ever have a rematch, start a little heavier, I guess. Cody got busted open on the ramp pretty early on as he went to do a dive over the rope onto Jericho, and Jericho dodges, so Cody's forehead hit the ramp, and that's where he got color. It was kind of hard to tell from the initial one, at least when I was watching, if it was a blade job or a hard way. But either way, it's one of those things like, does it matter? Perfect way to start building the drama early on, have Cody busted open. Shades of the American Dream, if you will. As he was recovering from it in ring, Jericho brought in a folding chair and sat on it, watching Cody bleed in ring. Perfect example of Jericho getting heel heat. A little bit after that, he put Cody in an abdominal stretch, and even was hitting his muscles there to add to the pain. When he got on the outside and got in her face, Cody's mother slapped Jericho. Now, in WWE, that probably would have led to a disqualification, but I'm glad the referee was showing some restraint there. Because it's one of those things like, hey, he got in her face. She gave him what he deserved. Cody turned the momentum of the match at this point and gave his mother a hug, as I think it was JR mentioned, mother and son reuniting. Cody got Jericho in the figure four leg lock when they were back in the ring, but Jericho reversed this into, as JR put it, an Indian deathlock type maneuver. Around this point in the match, as the referee had her back turned, Hager got several shots on Cody, and after one of them, the referee finally decided to eject him from ringside, which led to MJF taunting Hager with the, na 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 na, which led to Hager attacking MJF. A little bit after this, Jericho went for the Judas effect, but Cody reversed it into a crossroads for a near fall. And then he even pulled out the old bionic elbow for a near fall. Nice little tribute to the American Dream, plus a little shot at Jericho, considering Jericho's new finish is an elbow. It's like, we're going to show you how to really do the original elbow move, Mac Daddy, if you will. Jericho then pulled off the weightlifter's belt, which he had one custom made just to taunt Cody's usage of it, and started whipping Cody like a government mule. The ref eventually took it, which I didn't even notice if they amended this a no disqualification match. If not, the referee really was showing some discretion with that part, probably not wanting the match to end by disqualification. Jericho eventually put Cody's in the walls of Jericho after Cody attempted to do a top rope Hurricane Rana. Wily veteran, gonna get that walls in out of nowhere. A little bit after this, he got him in the Lion Tamer, and he had that in for half a minute, maybe a minute. Just the way he was wrenching back on it and the way Cody was selling it, you could really tell the challenger was in pain. And I was thinking, like, is he going to tap? Is he going to tap? Is he going to get out of this? And as I was thinking this, that's when I saw the towel get thrown in. I'm like, there it goes, the old towel get thrown in by the corner man finish. MJF threw in the towel because Cody looked in so much pain, and Jericho retains the title by submission. And Jericho goes off to celebrate with the Elite Los Champion in his little bit of the bubbly. MJF gets emotional afterwards, and sounds like the crowd was chanting, "You fucked up." Which I can understand why they would, because, like me, if they were so invested in Cody's chase and the fact that, per the stipulation, this would be his one and only world title match, because he doesn't want to seem like it's a conflict of interest. So MJF seems emotional. He goes to, apologize to Cody, embrace him a little bit, and then the swerve, bro. MJF turns on Cody by a low blow. And that's the little caveat to this. I'm like, well, that's a way to get out of the stipulation. They could always pull out that he threw in the towel to screw over Cody instead of being concerned for his safety. So Cody should be able to at least earn another world title match somehow, whether or not it's from a battle royal or whatnot. From there, not only does it allow Jericho to get his victory from a heelish fashion, allow Cody to walk out of the match without the title, without keeping on Jericho a little bit longer. Also facilitates him getting another match in the future, but it sets up Cody versus MJF down the road, possibly at their next big show. Now, I don't know if it was a plant or a fan legitimately showing some old school reactions to a heel doing this, but when MJF was almost at the end of the ramp, he got water thrown at him. Now, that was a perfect setup, and the announcers even say they don't condone fans doing that, but MJF sold it perfectly, where it was like, yeah, that's right, I know you hate me, I feed off your hate. Now, the reason I don't know if it was a plant or a fan is because before the camera turned away, I noticed security walking towards the person who threw it and looked like they're going to have a little chat with him. I didn't notice later on if that same fan was there because I didn't take note of who the fan looked like. But it's one of those things like, is that a plan or a fan? Being a security officer outside of my YouTube gig is one of those ones like, yeah, if either way, I can see it going. If it's a plant, they'd have security go over there and at least act like they're scolding him about it. But if it's a real fan, to be like, hey, guys, I know that you're a little into the show, but please do not throw that at the performers, okay? After that, we got the main event, the unsanctioned lights out match between Moxley and Omega. And the build-up for this was pretty good as well. You know, Omega getting attacked by Moxley at Double or Nothing. Moxley being very upset with Tony Khan and the fact that this being a non-sanctioned match, it wouldn't count towards their win-loss record. So as far as the company was concerned, it was never happening. Which the last time an unsanctioned match was built up this much, as far as I can remember, was Triple H versus Shawn Michaels. And I don't remember if they built that up in the pre-match stuff or if it was just built up on the pay-per-view, because I remember JR commentating on it as that match was beginning. But here actually commentating on it in the pre-match stuff I thought worked, especially with how they recorded Moxley's conversation with Tony Khan. Having the camera remain outside the locker room was like, what a novel concept. The camera shouldn't be following them into every place they go. You know, unless the camera is being invited by them, a la Goldust in going into the NWO locker room, but that is a complete horse of a different color. And the match being a unsanctioned street fight-ish match, it definitely felt that way, but I felt it went a little bit too long in the tooth. I mean, it was 38 minutes, 45 seconds, and when the match was about halfway done, I'm like, how much longer is this match going to go? That said, I did like the match, but I felt that, like I said, it went too long, and I think there were a little bit too many hardcore-ish spots. Near the end, there was a couple moments where I'm like, I get it that they're selling these guys toughness and the fact they want to kick the other one's butt, but wow. But I'll talk about that when I get to it. Early on, Omega did a drop kick to Moxley where he jumped over the guardrail to hit him, which I thought was a nice little show of athleticism. Moxley, when they got back in, pulled Barbie, the barbed wire baseball bat, and he used it on Omega, and he drew blood from the back. Now, obviously, you could tell he didn't do full swings to the back, because with that, you'd probably break the person's back, but enough to get the point in. Kenny eventually got out Moppy, and he used it to mop Moxley's back. So, turnabout's fair play, and Omega did a moonsault on Moxley with the trash can, which I thought was a nice little spot. Something you probably see in other companies. So, other than, you know, the Barbie and Moppy, nothing we probably wouldn't see too much in other companies. But we might see like a smaller version of that. Now, after this was something I don't think I've ever seen, at least in a big mainstream company in one of these matches, and that was a board with mouse traps pulled out from underneath the ring by Omega. Now, this is one of those things where you scratch your head and go, okay, why is that under the ring? But then you think, all right, probably Omega had them put them underneath the ring earlier just for this match. And it's also one of those things like, I've never seen mousetraps used in one of these matches before. Doesn't mean one of the quote-unquote mud show companies could have used one, but it's one of those ones like, okay, let's see how this goes. And of course, like I thought, Omega had it turned on him, just like Mankind had the thumbtacks turned on him in that Hell in a Cell match. And he got front suplexed onto the board, and you could hear the traps he landed on snap, so it's like, ugh! The only thing that didn't happen I thought was going to happen is see one of the traps stuck to him and pulled off with him, which, oh well, didn't happen. After this, when he recovered, a steel chain got brought into the ring by Moxley, which Omega got backslammed on it. And then an ice pick or screwdriver got brought in, and when I saw that, I'm like, all right, now they're taking it a little bit too far. I know that Moxley's mad and the fact that this match is not going to count towards the win-loss record, and it seems to be a little personal between the two, but an ice pick, really? Even Shawn Michaels and Triple H, during their blood feud, they didn't pull that ice pick out, because that's juvenile shit. This is probably one of the things that Cornette's going to complain about with this match that I will back him up on, Because an ice pick is literally too much. It eventually did play into the match, but thankfully not stabbing. The only thing that got stabbed by it, which was the turnbuckle, which I did like one of the shots they showed where you could actually see it embedded in the turnbuckle. Later on, it got dragged against Moxley's head, which when I saw that, even with the way they're doing it, it's like, yeah. I was talking with Gabe at the time, so I jokingly put, he's like, going, Omega was here. After the Ice Pick's first attempt, Omega started choking Moxley with a chain, which this was another spot that went a little bit too far. And depending on how it went, it could have gone wrong horribly fast, which I'm glad it didn't. And I like how the announcers built it up that Omega lost his grip on the chain because of the blood that had been spilled already. And I'm like, oh, I hope that's the last time this chain is used in there. There's some things that you probably shouldn't use in a wrestling match like this in certain ways, and a chain is one of them. This was followed by a flip dive into a table. And then after this, they brought in something, and they didn't want to bring in text, so instead they got broken glass. And when I saw the broken glass being spread along the ring, I'm like, okay, this is going to hurt when it lands, but how are they going to use this? The glass I thought was used a lot better than the chain and stuff were, and while you definitely could tell it hurts, and it hurts just watching, I think it built the drama better than the chain and actually fit more for a wrestling match. Moxley got spine busted into the broken glass, and then he was put in the sharpshooter and he had to crawl over it, which just showed how much, well, for lack of a better term, how much Moxley has. And even though it's a no DQ match, meaning no rope breaks and all that, he did manage to pull himself up out of the sharpshooter with the ropes. This is around the time that ice pick got brought back in and used to drag across. The two fought down to the rampway, and eventually we find that there is a barbed wire, a wire spider web table thing with it. When I saw that, I'm like, all right, someone's going to get tossed into that. And that is also where it's taking it a little bit too far, but that's like the ECW move of the match. And Omega got suplexed onto it, and both of them were holding onto it for a moment. When I saw that, I'm like, that barbed wire hopefully was gimmicked, because if not, we're going to probably see a lot more blood here. I mean, they probably didn't gimmick all of it because they got to actually show some damage, but even just watching it, I'm like, ow, that's gotta hurt. The crew did eventually pull them off, which led to a V trigger through the set. Which when I saw that, I'm like, damn, that's a nice little follow up to the barbed wire spot. Then once we got back into the ring, we got to the point where we got the usual kick out parts that we see in a lot of matches. I'm a little mixed on it. I mean, yeah, they're trying to show how tough these guys are. But at the same time, part of me is like, oh, finish should be the finish. But this was the main event, and it is a big-ish match. I mean, it's Moxley's biggest match in AEW to date because he's taking on Omega. It's a big match for Omega because he's taking on someone who just jumped ship from the quote-unquote biggest company in the world. So I could see why they wanted to go out with it, even though they'd already had a bunch of big spots in the match already. We had a paradigm shift into the glass for a near fall. And then we got Moxley exposing the ring's wooden floor, which when I saw that, I'm like, all right, this definitely feels like it's lights out, non-sanctioned, and a little hardcore. Nice for these wrestlers to show the fans what it actually looks like underneath there. Especially considering that one of the complaints about wrestling is, that ring, it's all just padding, there's nothing underneath it. When you see Moxley pulling the ring about, you can see how thick that padding is, and you just see the wooden underneath it. It's like, even if that padding was a little bit thicker, the fact that it's a wood floor, there's almost only so much give that padding's going to do. And there was a pile driver attempt onto the wood, which when I saw that, I'm like, all right, this is going to be good. It's either if it hits it, this better be the finish. If not, boo. Because if it's a pile driver, all right, I could give one kick out of that, like Cena versus Punk. But onto the exposed wood, all right, now you're taking my patience a little bit too far. Omega then hit a paradigm shift on the wood for a near fall on Moxley, which is like, all right, turnabout fair play. He's going to hit him with his own finish. Moxley kicking out of his own finish, I can see working because I can't think of the last time someone got hit with their own finishing maneuver, not counting wrestling someone who uses the same finish, like Kane and Undertaker, where they've kicked out of it. Omega went for a Phoenix Splash, and it was crash and burn onto the wood, which led into a paradigm shift from Moxley onto the wood for the win. So a crash and burn into a wood finish for the win, and both men were exhausted post-match. And Moxley, you can see some talking trash while he's looking into the camera and even flipped the bird. And then it goes off the air after a little bit of lingering. As you could tell from my spot-by-spot move set, I liked the match, but I think at times there was a little bit too much, especially in the mid-match. And the ending of it, I did like that final exchange of spots, but definitely could have been a little bit more conservative in the build-up to that. But for what this match is, it was a pretty good showing from the two. It's just they probably could have cut back at times, showed a little bit more restraint. But it did show just how tough and determined these two are, so it's a mixed bag. Definitely not my favorite match of the night, but worth the build-up and definitely worth the price of admission. Although I could see some of the old school wrestlers, announcers like Cornette, and some of the fans that prefer the old school build-up will definitely have a lot of issues with this match, especially if they weren't a fan of ECW or any of the hardcore matches. I'll say this, at least there was no jumping on the concrete or stupid spots like we see in some of the garbage show wrestlers. I mean, there were some spots that went in that direction, but nothing like some of the stuff that overly triggers people like Cornette. All in all, this was a pretty good pay-per-view showing. Definitely worth the price of admission for the 4 matches I wanted to see. If you haven't gotten around to seeing it, I'd say give it a watch if it's still available for watch on pay-per-view, because I'm sure the repeat viewing should still be available. If not, hopefully this show can be available on DVD soon. I hear New Japan is the reason that Double or Nothing has not been released yet. If so, get over it. And I definitely look forward to seeing what the fallout from this pay-per-view is going to be this week on Dynamite.